God bless Doug Poppa, an honest cop.
See, we did it, Doug. You don't come out, you don't buck the system. No matter what the reason is, you just can basically keep your mouth shut.
The high price one cop is paying for telling the truth.
From Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the Doug Poppa Podcast, episode 156 for Sunday, June 23rd, 2024. Welcome, folks. I'm Doug Poppa. As you all know, I'm a former law enforcement officer, criminal investigator, and former hotel casino executive, and current independent investigative journalist, and I'm the host of the Doug Poppa Podcast. Before we get into today's story, support my work if you can at paypal.me/Doug Poppa. The stuff that I do requires documents and records and different type of things, databases that cost money, and it comes out of my own pocket. Nobody supports me, so if you can help me out, I appreciate it. Contact the Doug Poppa Podcast for tips and or serious inquiries only at dpoppa@proton.me. Audio versions of the podcast are available on iHeartRadio and Spotify. Folks, today's topic: Jewish man wearing Star of David falsely arrested at pro-Palestine rally, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officer says. On May 27, 2024, the Doug Poppa Podcast published episode 154, titled Vegas Cops Targeted Citizens on Script, Violated Civil Rights, Provoked Altercations to Make Arrest. That episode was followed up on June 3, 2024, with episode 155 titled LVMPD Suspended Sergeant is also a defendant in 2020 violation of civil rights lawsuit. After episode 154 was published, another active duty Las Vegas Metro police officer reached out to the podcast. The officer stated that it had information in reference to my recent podcast episode and suggested that a public records request for video in possession of the LVMPD and arrest information will confirm that the brass are mandating arrest and that it's an arrest from November 2023 and falls in line with the information I discussed in my episode 154. Further contact was made with the officer. The officer said that on November 4, 2023, there was a pro-Palestine rally in front of the Venetian Hotel on the Las Vegas Strip, and that the incident in question occurred around 16:30 hours, which was 4:30 p.m. civilian time. The officer stated that Convention Center Area Command Bureau Commander Captain Steve Connell was on scene and had ordered officers to arrest the man when there was zero probable cause for an arrest. According to the officer, a Jewish man had taken his shirt off and had a Star of David necklace around his neck as he was walking through the rally. The officer stated that this man wasn't doing anything wrong, no provocation with anyone, yet he was arrested for disorderly conduct. Captain Connell, according to this officer, told the officers to arrest him for anything and take him to jail, and further said that Connell told the officers to make sure your body-worn cameras are off. The officer said that Fusion Watch was monitoring the protest and that Fusion Watch video will confirm that the man did nothing to be arrested for. For folks who don't know, Fusion Watch is the Fusion Center, the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center. Fusion Watch personnel monitor the police cameras that are installed at various points along the Las Vegas Strip and other areas throughout Las Vegas. The officer provided the Doug Poppa Podcast with the arrested person's last name, indicated that he was from out of state, and was staying at the Palazzo Hotel at the time. The officer provided 2 complete LVMPD event numbers. One, ending in 338, was the event number for the protest, and the second one, according to the officer, ending in 818, was for the arrest. I asked the officer what was his motivation for reaching out to the podcast. The response was that there are some officers at the Convention Center Area Command who disagree with Captain Connell's actions of skirting the law. The officer said that when Connell took over command, he brought in some of his own people who had worked with over the years in different units. Folks, troubling comments made by an active duty Las Vegas Metro police officer. So, what did I do after having been given this information? The most important police document to verify why a person was placed under arrest is the arresting officer's declaration of arrest, also called in short a DOA. I submitted a public records request to the LVMPD for reports associated with both event numbers. I received the incident report and the declaration of arrest associated with event number ending in 818. That incident report described a surveillance video that the police obtained from the Venetian Hotel that is logged into evidence. I submitted another LVMPD request for a copy of the Venetian Hotel video. The response was as follows. This email is to inform you that your request for video surveillance cannot be completed as LVMPD does not release any third-party video surveillance, CCTV, etc., as these are not the property of LVMPD, nor is LVMPD the original owners of said video. You will need to reach out to the Venetian in regard to obtaining their video. Folks, I didn't reach out to the Venetian Hotel because they will not release video surveillance footage to a journalist. In response to my request for reports associated with the event number ending in 338 that the officer told me was the event number issued for the rally, the LVMPD responded as follows. We have researched your request for, quote, incident report, unquote, and there are no records located. However, if you would like to request the event search and reproduction, CAD, which is, folks, the computer-aided dispatch, notes, complete a Communications Research Office request form. I submitted that request form for both event numbers and later received the Communications Center event search log for November 4th, 2023, associated with both event numbers. A declaration of arrest, like I said, is the form completed by an LVMPD police officer that describes the probable cause for an arrest. Keep in mind that in the state of Nevada, peace officers may not arrest a suspect for a misdemeanor offense without a warrant, unless the offense was committed in the officer's presence. There are a few exceptions to this law, such as a mandatory arrest for domestic violence. Disorderly conduct is a misdemeanor crime, and as such, a police officer must witness the elements of the crime personally to effect an arrest for this charge. For the purpose of this podcast, I will call the arrested man Dan. That is not his actual name. I'm going to get the declaration arrest up on the screen. For my audio podcast people on iHeartRadio and Spotify, you will not see the, of course, you will not see the screen. Okay, if you want to follow me, we'll start here at the top. Okay, on the screen, you see the declaration of arrest. Several entries were redacted by the police that contained the arrest information, personal identifiers, and I further redacted the names of the arrested person and the witness. Reading from the declaration of arrest as follows. At the top, you see Bureau. It says CCAC, which stands for the Convention Center Area Command, the area command responsible for the Las Vegas Strip. The declaration of arrest states that the incident occurred on 11/4/2023 at 16:50 hours, and the arrest was made at 16:55 hours. Now, that's 5 minutes from the time the incident occurred to the time of the arrest, according to the report. The undersigned makes the following declaration subject to the penalty of perjury and says that I am a peace officer with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Clark County, Nevada, being so employed for a period of approximately 3 years. That I learned the following facts and circumstances which lead me to believe that the above-named subject committed or was committing the offenses above at the location of 3355 South Las Vegas Boulevard, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89109, and that the offenses occurred at approximately 16:50 hours on the 4th day of November, 2023. Subtitle, Details of Probable Cause. Officers, C. Malone, P number 18360, G. Mott, MOTT, P number 18517. Arrestee, again I'm calling him Dan, and then you see CHI, criminal history information, redacted, charges redacted. They will not put what the person was arrested for when they give you this stuff through the records request. Witness, I'm going to call the witness Sue. That, of course, is not her real name. Introduction. On 11/4/2023 at approximately 16:50 hours, Officer G. Mott, P number 18517, and Officer C. Malone, P number 18360, operating as Patrol Unit 8 Mary 72, were at 3355 South Las Vegas Boulevard, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89109, regarding a protest taking place on the sidewalk for pro-Palestine protest. Officers saw a white male adult come into the protest and take off his shirt. The male did not say anything, but a witness who was identified through a Nevada ID card as Sue stated he was wearing a Jewish star and wanting to get attention of the pro-Palestinian people to get them rattled up and possibly start a fight. Folks, that's all speculation on Sue's part. What Sue described is not a crime, it's speculation, none of which, by the way, was witnessed by the police. Officers conducted a pedestrian stop on the male for redacted, which we now know was for disorderly conduct. I will tell you shortly how we confirm the charge of disorderly conduct, folks. Subtitle, Contact with Dan. Upon contact, the male was identified through out-of-state driver's license as Dan. Dan stated that he was not trying to cause any problems and that he's staying at the Palazzo Hotel. Dan was wearing a Jewish star and stated he was Jewish. No crime there so far, people. Dan knew that there was a Palestine protest taking place and was trying to cause a disturbance by getting into the middle of the crowd and have people acknowledge him. Folks, in my opinion, that appears to be speculation on the officer's part, but more on that later. Lieutenant B. Walford, P number 8461, approved the misdemeanor arrest. Subtitle, Contact with Sue. Sue stated that Dan was trying to rattle up the Palestinian people by taking off his shirt and trying to get a pro-Palestinian protesters to fight him. Sue stated she had to leave, did not have time to fill out a voluntary statement. Folks, there's no mention in the declaration of arrest of anything to corroborate what Sue claimed. There are no victims noted in the declaration of arrest. Subtitle, Conclusion. Due to the fact that Dan, and then there's 2 lines redacted for CHI, again, which is criminal history information, the arrest information, was transported to CCDC, folks, which is the Clark County Detention Center, and booked accordingly. And it says end. That's the end of the declaration of arrest. Wherefore, the declarant prays that a finding be made by a magistrate that probable cause exists to hold said person for a preliminary hearing if charges are a felony or gross misdemeanor, or for trial if charges are a misdemeanor. Arresting officer C. Malone, P number 18360. That's the officer that completed the declaration of arrest. Folks, from reading this here, what was the probable cause for the arrest of Dan for disorderly conduct? Apparently, from what I just read to you, there wasn't any. The officers only witnessed Dan walking to the protest and not saying anything. That is not a crime. His shirt being off and displaying a Star of David as they walked through a protest that was taking place on a public sidewalk is constitutionally protected under the First Amendment. No citizen filed a complaint against Dan. There are no witness statements or anything else mentioned in the declaration of arrest that any citizen was a victim of any crime. Okay. There is no mention in the declaration of arrest of any video surveillance, either from the Venetian Hotel or the Fusion Watch. Yet Dan was arrested for disorderly conduct, as the police reported, 5 minutes after he was stopped. Folks, not only is there no mention of the Venetian Hotel video surveillance and or any surveillance video from the Fusion Center mentioned in the declaration of arrest, but there's no mention of any body-worn camera video from the police officers. Why is that? It is my understanding that when body-worn camera video is available, the first line of a declaration of arrest should indicate BWC available, which in this case is not mentioned in the declaration of arrest. Is that because the officers were told to turn their body-worn cameras off, as the police source stated to the Doug Poppa Podcast? The police won't release the Venetian video that was uploaded into evidence.com, which is the digital cloud where the police video is stored. That being said, the police can release the video surveillance footage from the Fusion Center, because that belongs to them, and the body-worn camera video from all the officers who had contact with Dan, if it exists, if it wasn't turned off, as the police source told the podcast. The body-worn camera video, if it wasn't turned off, will show Dan's comments to the police and or sue. I don't have the budget to request these videos. Maybe somebody else can do that. Interestingly enough, I have several pages of the Communication Center event log for that day that indicates that Fusion Watch was monitoring the protest, as the police source stated to the podcast. Fusion Watch number 7 was over the radio calling out various suspicious persons to the police officers on site, but there is no mention at all of a man wearing no shirt who was walking through the crowd of provoking trouble, or allegedly provoking trouble. Earlier I stated that the police source said that Captain Steve Connell was on scene that day giving orders. Let me get this up on the screen for you. Okay. The Communication Center event log that I received confirms that. At 13:28 hours, that's 1:28 p.m. on November 4th, 2023, Captain Connell signs on Unit 201, his radio designation. He had signed out vehicle number 18465 and is listed as the primary unit for the protest at the Venetian. Connell is the highest ranking officer on scene, the incident commander. Throughout that afternoon, Connell is on scene at the protest in front of the Venetian, calling over the radio numerous times, including about 10 minutes so before Dan was arrested. What is not indicated in the Communication Center event logs for either event numbers is any mention of a man walking through the crowd with the Star of David necklace causing problems and or being detained by officers. The only entries for the arrest event number ending in 818 is as follows. It's 16:54 hours, and entry states WMA, which means white male adult, gray shirt. At 16:54 hours, another entry states 8 Mary 72, south side of Venetian, officers Connor D. Malone and Gerald Mott. At 16:58 hours, an entry states 8 Mary 72, one in custody, code 4. Code 4, folks, means everything is okay. At 17:08, entry states 8 Mary 70, another unit, need transport for one male. Subject is on Venetian side, security holding room. Now for the Venetian video, which is not mentioned in the declaration of arrest, as I previously stated. The arrest occurred on November 4th, 2023. 8 days later, on November 12th, 2023, in the incident crime report, not the declaration of arrest, it states supplemental. Officers later secured surveillance video from the Venetian specific to this incident. Venetian surveillance operators were following a suspicious subject that stood out as he was not wearing a shirt in November. Folks, just so you know, I checked the weather of November 4th, and it was in the 70s in the afternoon and went down to the 60s in the evening. The subject entered the crowd without a shirt. He was wearing a Star of David necklace and went to the front of the pro-Palestine crowd and engaged another subject. Be advised, it doesn't say in here what that means, engaged another subject, okay? And it says, that subject shook his head no, okay? So nothing happened. Somebody said something to somebody, the other guy shook his head no. The subject left the crowd to the south and put his shirt back on. The surveillance video was uploaded to evidence.com by Detective Bird. Also added into this incident crime report on November 12th, 8 days after the incident happened. During the protest, and I will call this guy Joe, that's not his real name, who was a volunteer and coordinated with the rally, contacted Lieutenant Johnson and stated a male had entered the crowd, took his shirt off, and was attempting to incite others to fight. How did Joe know that? Joe gave further information that the subject had a Star of David necklace indicative of the Jewish faith and was displaying this item. Joe said he received word that the subject was provoking others and was worried someone would get hurt. Joe pointed out the subject, who had now exited the south side of the crowd, which fits with the video that they said the subject put his shirt back on and exited the crowd. And my comment on this, folks, Joe didn't witness anything. He received information from an unknown subject who possibly denied the fact that Dan was walking through the crowd displaying his Star of David. Nobody filed any complaints with the police. There were no altercations listed anywhere in any report. The police state that the Venetian video showed Dan, the falsely arrested man, exiting the crowd and putting his shirt back on. Joe said the same thing to the police. Dan is out of the crowd by the time the police stopped him. So I have to ask, why was Dan even arrested? Going back to the declaration of arrest, nothing in the DOA supports a probable cause arrest for disorderly conduct, in my opinion. Whatever was added into the incident crime report 8 days later is immaterial to what's in the declaration of arrest that was completed on November 4th when they arrested Dan. A retired high-ranking police official who read the declaration of arrest told the Doug Poppa Podcast that in his opinion there was no probable cause for the arrest of Dan on November 4th, 2023. Folks, the police officer who reached out to the podcast said there was no probable cause for the arrest. The retired police official reached the same conclusion, and I have to concur with both of them. The declaration of arrest states that Lieutenant Walford approved the misdemeanor arrest. The police officer who spoke to the podcast said that Captain Steve Connell gave the order to make an arrest for anything and take the man to jail. The police incident report lists the victim not as any person, but as society/public. Get something up on the screen here for you. Hopefully it's big enough where you could see that. Okay, and I'll read it. It further states that, quote, Incident Command for the event authorized a misdemeanor walk-through booking as the possibility of future violence/confrontation was deemed high based on the heightened tensions of the event associated with the Palestine/Israel conflict. The subject was booked for redacted. Folks, a walk-through, let me get that off the screen here for a second here. So I got another thing coming up here I want you to take a look at. Okay. Folks, a walk-through booking means that the arrested person is going to be processed in at the Clark County Detention Center and then processed out. Depending on how busy they are at the jail, this could take several hours. In Dan's case, he was released on his own recognizance, did not have to post any bail, the same day he was arrested. This is confirmed in Las Vegas Justice Court records that I obtained. When they say that he was booked as the possibility of future violence/confrontation was deemed high, folks, that's what's called a what-if arrest. What may happen, a possibility, okay? When I was a police officer, you never put anything in a police report, maybe, could be, might happen, or possibility, okay? This was a what-if arrest. That's simply what it's called. just arrest a person for something because in case something happens later on. But you got to remember, Dan was already out of the protest. More on that later. And like I said, Dan was already out of the protest when the police stopped him. That's documented in their report. You can't arrest somebody on a trumped-up charge of disorderly conduct when there's no probable cause for the arrest because you think that something may happen if that person is not arrested. That aside, what matters here, folks, is that on November 22nd, 2023, the Clark County District Attorney's Office denied the charge of disorderly conduct against Dan, dismissed and closed the case. That says it all, folks. That is documented in the Las Vegas Justice Court records that I obtained. There are no entries documented in the Communications Center event log of Lieutenant Walford and the Incident Command authorizing the arrest, as is stated in the reports. Any communication not going out over the radio between these parties must have been occurring either in person or over by use of a cell phone. On November 5th, 2023, 8 News Now Las Vegas reported that, quote, there were many people holding up signs that had statements like, quote, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which is considered anti-Semitic language, according to 8 News Now, according to the the anti-defamation, let me read that, will be free, which is considered anti-Semitic language, according to the Anti-Defamation League. This is a screenshot that I took from the news broadcast, and that's one of the signs that's holding up there, and you could see where it says from the river to the sea. Basically, that means the eradication of Israel. That's what the Jewish people believe. So, not to get into the politics, but just so you know what that is, that's that's a screenshot. Okay. This is a news clip, ladies and gentlemen, from Fox 5. It's only a couple of seconds. I want you to take a listen to it because I think it's going to be pertinent to what's going to happen after we see that.
Fox 5's Shana Khalafi has more on the rising tensions along the Strip.
From the river to the sea. From the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free.
Okay, so in addition to the people holding up the signs, the people at the rally, the organized rally, were making that comment. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I made contact with Dan, the falsely arrested man. Dan lives out of state. He is a business executive, and this is what Dan told me. Dan said he came to Las Vegas with some friends to gamble. He said, I didn't have a single drink. I never cursed or raised my voice to anyone, not even the police. I had no idea that there was going to be some sort of pro-Palestine demonstration outside. I just happened to be walking back to the hotel where I was staying and stumbled upon it. The protesters there were talking about from the river to the sea. They were talking about eliminating not only me, but all of my blood and all of my future one. I would expect any decent person to be moved by that. Dan said, I removed my shirt to show my Star of David necklace. I didn't provoke any fight. It was one of me with hundreds of them. How would I fight with them physically anyway? It was my exercise of my free speech. Somebody told me to put my shirt on, and I responded no. As I was leaving the protest, 5 police officers came up from behind me and handcuffed me and detained me, and then they walked me through the parking lot to some back area behind the Venetian. One of the officers stayed with me while the others walked off. I asked why I was being detained. The officer who was with me said, I'm told it's for disorderly conduct. He said the other officers went inside to review video surveillance. About 15 minutes later, they put me into a transport. There was a back section, and you sit on a bench, and I think there was a men's and a women's section. I was the only male on my side. They took me to the jail. Dan said nobody read him his rights. Dan said sometime later he was released from the jail. On his own recognizance, he didn't have to post bail. Ladies and gentlemen, my closing comments here. Oh, I forgot to mention that Dan hired an attorney. I'm not taking sides on what happened because I was not there. My opinions are based solely on what I was told by my police source, by the documents that I read to you, what I saw in that video, and what the retired police official told me. Ladies and gentlemen, peaceful protests are protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. That includes hateful and/or disturbing speech that may offend another person. There were several dozen police officers, uniformed and plainclothes, that were on scene at the protest, to include detectives from the counterterrorism and criminal intelligence sections, and that's according to the documents that I received from the police department. If Dan was causing a, quote, disturbance, at the same time displaying a religious symbol of his Jewish faith, why wasn't he charged with a hate/bias enhancement, which I believe is a gross misdemeanor? Some of the protesters were holding signs that said "from the river to the sea," and also making verbal comments of the same. The police could not have arrested them because no matter how hateful that speech may be to a Jewish person, it's protected under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, as was Dan's action of removing his shirt to show his Star of David in protest of what he heard. Folks, what bothers me about this, there's a lot of similarities between this false arrest and what was described in my episode 154. And if you don't know what I'm talking about in 154, go back and view it. The links will be in the description section of this video cast when it's published. Here, folks, once again, we have officers from the Convention Center Area Command under the command of Captain Steve Connell. We have Steve Connell, the captain mentioned by my police source. We have Lieutenant Bradley Wolford mentioned, and he's mentioned in the other two podcasts, and a false arrest for disorderly conduct, similar to the false arrest that we discussed in episode 154, again for what? Disorderly conduct. Sheriff Kevin McMahill and Under Sheriff Andrew Walsh, you have an open mic at any time should you care to comment on this. I would love to interview with you, and I've been saying that for several years. Of course, you don't respond. Please release without cost to me, in the interest of transparency, the officer's body-worn camera video, if it was not turned off, that is, and the Fusion Watch video connected with the false arrest on November 4, 2023. Folks, see you on the next podcast. Remember, contact the podcast, dpoppa@proton.me. Support my podcast if you can. Add it up on the screen. Get it up there one more time. PayPal.me/Doug Poppa. And we will see you on the next episode. I got a lot more stuff coming out, including what some other police officers told me about some other stuff I've never talked about before, and some other things going on that do not concern the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Thanks again. You'll have a good evening, and see you on the next one.
If I wouldn't do it all over again, I would take the badge and I would leave it on somebody's desk and get out of place work.
One man who confronted truth and consequences.